Welcome to the Johnny and Friends Ministry Podcast. I'm Crystal Keating, bringing you real conversations about disability and hope, and exploring your questions about how to include people with special needs in your community and in your church. You can subscribe to the podcast by visiting johnnyandfriends.org/podcast or by finding us on your favorite podcasting app. Well, you know how much I love hearing people's stories, especially the interesting ways that God works in someone's life to open their hearts to His purpose. Today, I'm excited to sit down with Adam Rinehart, who serves as Associate Director of the Special Needs Ministry at Calvary Community Church here in Southern California. Now, Adam didn't expect to have a full-time career in disability ministry, but hear how God used a few important experiences to open his heart to serving families impacted by disability. Today, I get to sit down with former Johnny and Friends Cause for Life intern and Associate Director of the Special Needs Ministry at Calvary Community Church, Adam Rinehart. Welcome to the podcast, Adam.
Thanks, Crystal.
It is so great to have you here, and it's great to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
I love when the interns come through in years past, just to see the excitement of college students who are enthusiastically willing to learn about disability ministry. And that's where I met you a couple years ago.
Yeah.
You were an intern, and here you are now. I know we really want to talk about your Cause for Life internship with Johnny and Friends, but before we do, I would love to hear what you've been up to this past year. Tell us about your role in full-time ministry at Calvary.
Oh my goodness, it's been so exciting. This past year, I started last September. It kind of came out of nowhere, and I wasn't expecting to be here or to be doing what I'm doing, but it's just been so fun. It's been a blessing to me just to work there, to work with such an incredible church, a staff team.
It's the real deal. Calvary is such a unique church. It's a larger church, but, you know, for a long time, the leadership has really been passionate about Jesus' call to go out and reach out to those who are lame, blind, the least of these, to bring them and make God's house full. And you guys do such a great job about loving on families.
It's so true. You hit the nail on the head there. Like, without the leadership team at Calvary backing up that ministry, it's important what they do. And it's important that the whole church has kind of caught that vision and sees the need, and also just sees the joy that it brings to our church, and the fact that these families are really an integral part of our body at Calvary. And yeah.
Very cool. Well, give us a life in the day of Adam Rinehart. What's it like to come to work every day, full-time ministry at a larger church, serving families affected by disability?
So I'd say my job has about 2 or 3 parts. I'd say a pretty large percentage of my job is administrative. I will coordinate with volunteers, with families, send emails, work on communications. And on the other end, we have quite a few events we do. So we have monthly respite events called Buddy Break. So I help to coordinate those. I help facilitate the programming we have each month. We'll do like a different fun theme. This month, we actually have a water day. We'll have like a balloon toss. We'll have different sensory things out on the lawn and just different fun stuff like that. So
that's awesome. I know you guys do a beach day too for all the families.
Right.
I heard that's a huge hit.
It's a blast. Yeah, we just kind of welcome any family that wants to attend. We have hundreds of feet of access mat for the beach.
Oh yeah, down at the sand.
Yeah, so it's fully accessible. There's accessible bathrooms there, parking, everything. So I'm super excited for Beach Day.
Well, and Beach Day is really fun because you have all of these families come who may not ever get a break. And you're assigning a buddy to the kids as well, right? So parents get a break and kids are safe. And so you can enjoy the day.
Yeah, that is what's really unique about it, is like once the families arrive, if their child wants to swim or just run around on the beach, like we have swim buddies, we have people on beach patrol, we have just a lot of different volunteer roles for the event, and it just makes things smooth, and it hopefully would allow the families to have a great time.
So I love what you guys are doing. You have a fun job.
I do have a fun job. And it's so true. For our larger annual events, I think we really will have a lot of families show up who have never interacted with Calvary before. And through those events, we'll have families start to attend regularly and to attend on Sundays. And we also provide buddies, one-on-one buddies each Sunday, and also work on the integration piece and just what the family wants for their child, we do for their child. So if they want their child to be integrated into typical classrooms, we'll send a buddy with them. And it's really unique and a really cool opportunity. I mean, just this past Sunday, we had a child with special needs integrated into every area of ministry in our church. And
That's awesome.
it was just really special.
Well, I have to know, Adam, I mean, here you are, you're in full-time ministry, you're in your 20s, and I just want to know, how did you begin to take great interest in the spiritual well-being of children and families and individuals affected by disability? I mean, did you feel called to ministry or did you grow into it?
For me, my family doesn't have like a specific connection or a family member affected by a disability. So it's really unique kind of how I went through that journey of just growing that empathy for myself and having that awareness. I'd say the first instance of my empathy growing for people with disabilities really started when my family did foster care. So we did foster care for 4 different kids from different countries who needed to come to the States to receive medical care. So most of these kids were actually affected by a disability when they came to our care. So I'd say when we did the foster care, it was a good way for me to just be introduced to the world of disability, and I think it was a good way to kind of begin that journey.
Absolutely. I had no idea. Now, what was the sense in your household? I mean, was it that sense of like, man, these are my brothers and sisters, or they're only here for a short time and they're coming back? I mean, where were their parents?
Yeah, I think my parents did a good job of kind of leading us through that. Like, hey, these aren't your brothers and sisters. Like, we're going to be sending them back to their families. Their families miss them and they're waiting for them to return. So they did a good job setting those boundaries so that I wasn't totally heartbroken when they had to leave.
Yeah, giving you an anticipation of the future, expectations.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, of course, it was still hard when they left.
Yeah.
Because you build that connection, but it's also exciting to know that they're going back to people who love them, and hopefully they're going back with a few less challenges related to their health.
Right.
So.
I love that your family did that. These children had an opportunity to come and get excellent care and be a part of a family who loved the Lord and loved them.
Yeah.
What a gift. That's awesome. Okay, now that was when you were younger. Fast forward to like high school and even college.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't really interact with people with disabilities growing up, didn't really have opportunities. And then when I was 15, my church decided to send a team of volunteers to a Johnny and Friends family retreat.
What?
And I didn't want to go. Not going to lie.
Real talk.
Yeah, real talk. Did not want to go, but someone convinced me, forced me. I don't really remember.
Oh, no.
Anyway, I ended up going to this family retreat. It was through the Ohio Johnny and Friends office. So we went to this retreat. It was actually located on a mountain in Pennsylvania. Just a beautiful area. And it was a little terrifying. I was 15, but I ended up being paired with a young boy with autism, and he is nonverbal, and there were just a lot of needs there. And me having no experience going in, I was just kind of terrified, like deer in headlights a little bit, like what's going to happen? I remember just going throughout that week and gradually just becoming more comfortable, learning more about his communication needs, how I can connect with him, even though he's nonverbal. There's so many ways to connect with people who are nonverbal. And yes, it was exhausting. Yes, I ran around the whole week, but I was a 15-year-old, so, they can use that energy at family retreat. But I just grew to really love him and to love his family. And I think God used that week at family retreat to just change my perspective of people, not necessarily just people with disabilities, but all people. That was a powerful week for me. I don't know if I fully realized it at the time.
Sure.
But a few years down the road, when I looked back, I just realized how much that camp shaped me and formed me. I kind of got hooked after that, and I went back to family retreat every year.
Every year after 15?
Every year after 15.
Yeah.
Some summers I would do multiple retreats, and it's just really cool how everything developed after that.
So the Johnny and Friends Family Retreat as an STM, a short-term missionary, was a huge turning point for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was.
That is incredible. And, we hear stories over and over again of what God does in those 4 or 5 days where families are together. We've heard from families saying it's like they live on this island of disability where they feel really isolated, and they finally come to a place where they feel accepted, understood. They get a time of rest. It's a time of fun, and they get to hear the word of God and get to worship freely. A little slice of heaven. That's what's always said about family retreat.
That's so true. They are really fun and just an amazing experience. I'm still connected with a lot of the families who I just got to work with at family retreat. And one family in particular, my second year at Johnny and Friends, I was paired with this young boy named Jacob, and he has autism. He's higher functioning, and we just had a blast. And every year after that, they requested me as their buddy.
Oh.
So I think I buddied him for like 3 or 4 years. It's been cool to just maintain that connection with him and his mom. And you really can't explain it other than we're friends. And I love them, and it's been such a cool time. I think my final summer serving at family retreat in Ohio, I was paired with this boy named Matthew. I think he's 13 now. Matthew has autism, and just the nicest guy. Really love that guy. His parents and his sister, they're just a phenomenal family. But that week at Johnny and Friends, he decided that he wanted to be baptized. And so they have pastors at Johnny and Friends family retreats. And so we went down to the pool, and a crowd of like 70 plus people showed up. And we got to baptize Matthew, and he just came out of the water with his hands raised, and it was a beautiful moment. And then everyone jumping in the pool with him after, and it was just a big party.
It's touching you because I can see some tears in your eyes right there.
Yeah, it still gives me the chills when I talk about it.
These are the highlights of family retreat, when people come to the Lord and they really make that commitment of, I'm following Jesus and I'm not turning back. Ability or disability, unique abilities. So amen to that. I'm loving getting to know you, Adam. You have such a great story. And so talk about how you became interested in a Cause for Life internship with Johnny and Friends.
Yeah, so I think just all the years of attending family retreat, I knew I wanted to just continue being involved. I found out about the internship program really through the retreat director in Ohio. Ended up applying for an internship position at the Ohio office about 3 years ago. It was after my sophomore year of college.
Okay, and I have to say this just for our listeners. Maybe there are some who recognize that Johnny and Friends is in California. That's where Johnny works. But maybe they don't know that we actually have offices all over the United States. And that's what you're talking about, the area ministry in Ohio that's exploding in the churches and family retreats. Okay, so you were serving in the Ohio office. Now, okay, you were in college, but you weren't like a ministry major. You weren't a Bible major. What was your major?
So I was a music major, and my emphasis was in trumpet performance, which is really fascinating to most people who I share that with. They're like, wait, what? You're okay. I did have a few minors. I minored in Bible and psychology at Cedarville. Cedarville University down in Southwest Ohio. My initial dream was to pursue music therapy. There's kind of the connection there.
Got it.
So with music, my dream in high school, I wanted to be a music therapist. I wanted to get my PhD and work with kids with autism. That was kind of my dream. Kind of got to also emphasize in music therapy as part of my music major. It was, I don't know, maybe sophomore, junior year when I was really deep into the psychology classes. I was like, ooh, I really like psychology, but I want to keep this passion for working with families affected by disability. Right. So I kind of started to feel pulled towards a counseling degree. And I was like, can I even get a counseling degree without having an undergrad degree in psychology? And there were all those fears, but it actually worked out so that I could apply for grad school and pursue mental health counseling. And my dream there was to provide counseling for families with disabilities, and actually got accepted to grad school. And then when I got the job out here, just kind of called up my grad school and said, hey, I'm not going to be doing this anymore. So
God laid the pathway.
Exactly.
And you were out here doing your internship in the Southern California office, the headquarters here at the International Disability Center at Johnny and Friends. So what was your internship like? Talk about the people that you were with, the experiences you had.
I was really excited for the internship. I wasn't quite sure what to expect out here. I had never been out to California at all. I had never been to Johnny and Friends headquarters, but it was really exciting. We did an international trip to the Dominican Republic.
Really?
Yeah. We actually got to work for a few days with a school near Santo Domingo and doing different training sessions with the teachers on how to interact with the kids with disabilities who were part of their school. And then we also visited different churches and families in communities, families affected by disabilities who don't really get to leave the house very often. And it was very eye-opening. There's a lot of needs and it almost seems overwhelming, but then it's so encouraging to see what the churches are doing there. Like if someone with a disability doesn't have access to community, the churches there bring the community to them.
Yes. What a great example to us. I love that. You know, it just makes me think of the verse, Psalm 82:3, that says, give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. When I think of Cause for Life interns, I think of all of the training that you guys are going through. But in your outreaches, you are really speaking up for those who can't speak for themselves. You're giving them an opportunity to be invited into God's house, to be part of a church, to be part of a community, and you're learning how to be a part of a church that can go out and reach out. And that is God's heart.
Yeah. And really the best way to do that is to do it, you know, like we can talk about it a lot. We can talk about, oh, we should be doing this. We should be doing this. But at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. Like, I'm actually going to step out and I'm going to do it. And I think that's an opportunity Johnny and Friends in general provides for teens and people in college. And at some point, you just have to make a decision to get involved. Because once you do, you're going to love it.
You're going to love it.
You're going to love it. And the reason you're doing it is going to change, because it's not going to be out of a sense of duty. It's going to be because you love doing it and because you love building real relationships with real people.
Totally. Well, you know, you working at a church, you grew up in a Christian family going to church, and you went to Cedarville, which is a Christian university. So I'm wanting to know, how did the Johnny and Friends Cause for Life internship impact your faith, your walk with God?
Yeah, so, I mean, even going back to when I was 15 and I started serving at Johnny and Friends Family Retreat, I'd say while I grew up in the church and in a Christian home, I never really knew who Jesus was. And so when I started serving at Johnny and Friends, I was still in that time in my life where I knew who God was. I knew the gospel in a sense, but I didn't really know it. I didn't know I could have an actual relationship with God, and that what Jesus did for me on the cross would provide access to God in that way, and the Holy Spirit just working in me and how I'm interacting with others. So none of those things were really apparent to me. I grew up in the church and my faith just wasn't my own, and I didn't really know what I was pursuing. So even throughout high school, I just wasn't walking with the Lord. And so when I went to family retreat, there were these really great influences of just real Christian community, some really cool moments of worship and moments where I got to see God working in amazing ways. And I think those were all very formative in God's plan to just bring me back to himself, and Jesus reaching out to me and saying like, hey, you're not pursuing me, but I still love you. And I like want you to know me. And so there were just a lot of powerful moments throughout serving with Johnny and Friends that where I saw glimpses of the gospel. I saw glimpses of who Jesus is. Yeah, I'd say those were formative. But even when I went to college, I still wasn't pursuing the Lord. And I remember just hearing a lot of different sermons or messages about the gospel. And I was really starting to connect with it, to understand like, who is God and why is he worth it? Why is it worth giving up your desires to pursue the Lord? Because it does require some level of sacrifice to decide you want to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
But at that point in my life, I hadn't determined that it was actually worth it to give up what I desired for the sake of pursuing Christ. Yeah, freshman year of college, a lot of internal battles for me. I was not open during that time in my life. I don't think I had ever shared my story with a single person at that point in my life. So the concept of just being vulnerable with someone was like kind of freaky to me. I was like, ooh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to open up to someone that seems like forced and unnatural to me. So around Christmas break of my freshman year, my best friend who I grew up with in my hometown, he was diagnosed with brain cancer. And it was pretty shocking for me, but we thought he would have like a good amount of years left. But a month and a half later, he ended up dying from brain cancer, and that kind of just rocked my world and kind of brought me to rock bottom. I remember just having that feeling of nothing else matters right now other than like I lost my best friend who I grew up with, and
so suddenly.
Yeah, and it was sudden and it was hard. And I didn't understand like why this would happen. And so I remember just kind of crying out to God, like, God, I don't understand why this happened, but would you use this for your glory? Like in some way, would you teach me through this situation? And
it's beautiful you didn't harden yourself to God. You really humbled yourself before him. You were honestly seeking answers and understanding, and you wanted him to be seen and known.
Yeah. And I think I could have easily been brought to that point of hardening myself against God because it was in such a formative time in my life. Kind of after that point of crying out to God, full honesty, like entered a really challenging season. And I think that's where a lot of people who are maybe in that young adult stage of life, maybe in college, coming out of high school, maybe they're just like going through this continual cycle of like discouragement or feeling confused or making decisions that are causing hurt in their lives, or just other people have caused hurt in their lives, or situations have caused hurt in their lives. And so there's this cycle of realizing who Jesus is and like being really thankful for everything he's doing, and then falling back into those patterns of discouragement or whatever it is. And I think an important thing for me in my past has been realizing that every time I enter a low point, that it doesn't mean that Jesus is waiting, has stepped back and is waiting for me to figure it out. And then he's going to come back into my life after I figure that challenge out. But he's like walking with me through each of those situations. And he's waiting for me to just see him and to realize that I can't do this without him and that I need him.
Adam, thanks for your honesty to know that Jesus continues to pursue those who are his, whose hearts, even though they're going through a time of discouragement and questioning, that God's love through Jesus is faithful. He said, I'll never leave you or forsake you. No one can snatch you out of my hand.
Yeah.
And I can see how that type of experience for you gives you a compassion for people with disabilities who often go through a lot of discouragement and a lot of the ups and downs. And, we talk about the cycle of even grief with families where they're going through times of repeated hardship. There's a connection point for you to minister to them, to say, God is still with you, even if it doesn't feel like he is.
It's true. I think when I even prayed that initial prayer, I don't think I fully understood what I was asking for. Like, God, use this for your glory and teach me through it.
That's a big prayer.
Yeah. And then a lot has happened from that specific hardship in my life, as God has provided opportunities for me, maybe not to speak wisdom to people, but maybe just to listen and to recognize that listening goes such a long way. And maybe I can't connect with everyone's individual situation, but I can connect with their need to be heard. And I can connect with their need to have someone just love them through hard times.
So Adam, how did your Johnny and Friends Cause for Life internship prepare you for your current role in disability ministry?
Honestly, just experiences of interacting with different individuals, I think was the biggest impact for what I do now. The only way you learn is by gaining experience. And I think Cause for Life just provided experiences and good leadership and cool people to work with,
right?
And peers,
yeah,
who are also passionate about the same things. And so all of those things kind of combine to really prepare you for any involvement in ministry. And for me, it really did.
Book learning can only take you so far, but as you said, you just have to do it.
That's right.
You have to live it. Well, I love that too, because we think about discipleship. What did Jesus say? He said, go and make disciples of all nations, teaching them to observe everything I've commanded you. And so I think of Cause for Life internship as sort of a discipleship program in some ways, where you're learning how to live out God's call to minister to all people, especially those with various disabilities. I mean, really, it equips students to become leaders in disability ministry, to transform lives through the gospel and impact their churches and communities for Christ. I mean, you guys are advocating for the justice, freedom, and equality for people impacted by disability. Adam, it's been such a joy talking to you, and our time is running out, but one of the last things I wanted to ask you is, now that you've been through the Johnny and Friends Cause for Life internship and are working in full-time ministry, what advice do you have for others who are in college or maybe feeling the call of God on their life to minister to those with disabilities?
I'd say go for it. Get involved. Hey, maybe you're not even in college yet and you're like, I want to get involved. Well, there's ways to do that. By going to family retreat, you can do that in your church by starting something. Maybe you are in that position where you just need to start. You just need to do something. And I guarantee you there's opportunities in your community that you don't even know about. So that's a great place to start for people considering Cause for Life. I'd say it's a great opportunity. There's cool experiences to be had. There's real people you're going to get to interact with. You're going to get to build relationships. And again, I think that's the most unique and special part about the internship. You're going to come out connected with certain individuals that might totally shift your perspective on the world. And I think that's the most unique thing.
I agree with you, Adam. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for just being so transparent, and what an example you are of what God can do through a young man who has a willing heart. You're a blessing.
Thank you so much for having me.
I loved hearing Adam's story. It's truly amazing how God opened his eyes and his heart to disability ministry. From his early experiences with foster care, to volunteering at family retreat, to participating in a Cause for Life internship, Adam discovered a natural compassion for people living in the margins. He may have never imagined working full-time in a church, but God revealed a greater purpose for his life. Even though full-time ministry is not everyone's calling, we are all called to love and serve people impacted by disability. I encourage you to learn more about how you can include people with special needs in your church and community. Just go to johnnyandfriends.org/podcast to download a free book called Start with Hello. You can also learn more about volunteering at Family Retreat or serving as a Cause for Life intern. We have so many opportunities for you to get involved. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I'm your host, Crystal Keating, and if you'd like to hear more from Adam, please visit johnnyandfriends.org/podcast to read a special blog post about how God has worked in his life. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you can join me again next week on the Johnny and Friends Ministry Podcast. Thanks for listening.